Welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur Podcast, which exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. I'm John Frank, fellow entrepreneur and the owner of Third Road Management. And with this podcast, we will connect with a variety of experienced and dynamic individuals to shed some light on both the art and science of entrepreneurship. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, my very own Third Road Management, a company that brings fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized organizations by revolutionizing the CFO suite. We'd also like to thank Two Hound Red, a brewery and restaurant located in Glen Ellen, Illinois, that is focused on creating classic, innovative beer and food. And finally, we'd like to thank NWC Media, which provides inbound marketing technology, project workflow management, and efficiency consulting to organizations of varied sizes, who is also the producer of the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. All right, Laura Miller, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a blast. I'm very honored to have you here, and I think let's dive in. Call it the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. Obviously, it's just a little play off of Third Road Management, if you will, but it's just like this, the idea of having these short to midterm conversations with business leaders or people that are around business leaders frequently to share different ideas, perspectives, ideas that people maybe aren't familiar with, or at the same time, it might be a source of inspiration for somebody. So it could be a lot of different things, but we started it a couple of years ago, and it's been a lot of fun doing it. So honored to have you here.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me. It's been great listening. I've watched a few leading up, getting to know some of my peers in the community or folks you've interviewed. So thanks for doing it for us.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about you and your background history.
Okay.
You're currently the Chief Financial Officer, CFO, Strata. Strata is a leader in development of cloud-based financial planning, data support, and performance analytics solution. You've had stops as the CFO of Pampered Chef. You were the controller of stats, and you spent some time at Starwood, and it looked like originally PwC, right?
Right.
So I'm a former Arthur Andersoner, so
Right.
I'm familiar with that turf. But I always like to I think part of the beauty of the story, if you will, or conversation is just understanding your story and how you view your career sort of weaving through there, and how does it relate to even did you have a family member in your childhood that was involved? I'm making that up, but I'm just curious. So go back as far back as you want, and take me along your journey. And how did you get
absolutely
here today?
It's amazing how the small things can influence it. I started as senior in high school. I took an accounting class and I loved it, but it was very classic, filing invoices and using Peachtree software, everything balanced. It felt so great.
Yep.
And I went in and said, I'm going to be an accounting major. I'm going to get my CPA. I found a school that was known for accounting, declared accounting major as a freshman, went in, got the degree, and this was it, an accountant from the start.
Yep.
So I graduated from UW-La Crosse, which is in Wisconsin, where I grew up.
Yeah, and I was going to say you grew up in Wisconsin, right? Yep.
Grew up outside of Milwaukee.
Okay.
Go Pack Go.
That's all right. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Right, but here
since
it is.
you did.
I mean, start yesterday. Oh
Yesterday was a little tough for the Bears.
My goodness. But I actually moved out of state immediately. I started with an internship with PwC in Phoenix, in their Phoenix office. Showed up at their door when I was in town one day and said, hey, I want to work here. My resume's coming. What do I need to do? I wanted Big Four on my resume. I knew that was the move. So I started with Phoenix at PwC and had a couple of good years there, and ultimately said, I really want to learn a language. Would you pay for it? If I went back to school to learn Spanish or got my MBA or did something with also a degree to learn a second language, and they said, what if we just send you to another country? I said, all right, cool.
One way to do it.
One way to do it, right?
Yep.
And in 6 weeks, I was in Geneva, Switzerland. Probably had to look up where Geneva was and what language they spoke, right? Didn't know anything about it, but ended up living in Geneva, Switzerland with PwC for a little over 2 years, working on US GAAP clients. And I would say just throughout the PwC experience, that entry level, learn everything. It was so key still to my foundation and how I hire today, how I think about candidates. I know we're going to talk a bit about CPAs, but during that time, just setting a good framework. That's when I got my CPA when I lived in Switzerland. I flew back to take the exam, but um, really learning all of the skills you need: time management, how to send a good email, how to take feedback, how to give feedback, how to be critiqued,
Yep.
how to show up professionally, stay when you need to stay. And I find that period in your life, you've got the most flexibility, either financially, maybe have a family at that point. Geographically, for me, I could say yes to anything. So really just following whatever came my way. So moving to Switzerland with no knowledge and didn't know one word, but no, speak a bit of French. So I was there for about 2.5 years, came back to the Phoenix office. Low retention rate in programs like that throughout
Yeah.
the big four. You come back, you've had this big experience, ready to explore the world. So ultimately, I left PwC and went to Starwood Hotels. I really wanted to learn how to manage people directly, make the decisions on hiring, make the decisions on growing a team. So I started in the finance corporate office in Phoenix, ultimately went across the street to a hotel. Thought if I'm going to work for a hotel company I wanted to work my whole career there. I would need to work in a hotel for a bit, work in operations.
Yep.
So I went across the street to the Westin Kierland. I've been there. It's
Oh, I've been there.
beautiful property.
I love that
Wonderful.
property.
Me
Yeah.
too. It's great. It's got all kinds of components between the timeshare, golf, spa, retail, restaurants. So you kind of learn all kinds of operations. And across the street from the corporate office, we could pilot things, still maintain that relationship, and almost be a small company within a big company. We had different ownership groups, et cetera. So there I learned how to term people, how to build development plans, how to hire, and hard stuff. That's the hardest part. I
Yep.
still to this day think of leading people as making those choices. I got my feet wet throughout and kept growing, and ultimately went to the Moana Surfrider, which is on Waikiki Beach, and was the controller there.
Wow.
Japanese ownership group. So I lived in Hawaii a little over a year or so. Was pregnant with my daughter, ultimately decided, oh, I think I'm going to move back to the mainland to have her be closer to family, et cetera. I had an opportunity to join back into the corporate office with Starwood. This time, my first time in an FP&A function. So I moved into an FP&A function in Seattle and was there about a year and a half when Marriott bought Starwood. Decided, do I want to go to Marriott? Do I want to go to the East Coast? What am I up to? I mentioned earlier flexibility at this point now. Got a daughter,
Yep.
married, not really the time to be as flexible as I thought. So I actually moved back to the Midwest where my parents were, and I joined Stats, which is Vista private equity owned. I was a global controller. Felt like my dream job. I just kept saying, the company is so cool. It was started in Northbrook. Moneyball is based on it.
Yep.
All those analytics with sports. Just such a cool job. And my first time in private equity. Up until then, I'd only been in huge companies. Hadn't even thought of the CFO seat. I didn't even know if I knew who the CFO was. Hadn't thought about
Right.
making an impact by walking down the hall. And this is the first time it was a smaller, I mean, it's still a huge organization, but much more influential. Learned a lot, led a global team. So in this case, it's closing offices, opening offices all over the world, and thinking about just efficiencies, cost efficiencies, private equity world, how that goes. And wanted to be the CFO there. Was started a high potential program with them to grow into the executive chair, but then got a call from Berkshire Hathaway. We've got a seat ready. So
Yep.
made that move. It was really close to where I was living at the time. It's right here outside of Glen Ellen, where we are, and moved to join their team in kind of a training regard. We had 18 months or so before the CEO and the CFO left, and we both took over together and kind of restarted the executive team. At that point, I had my second child, and the pandemic happened. So we kind of lived through this massive, crazy time. Pampered Chef had a really wild pandemic experience.
Yep.
First time CFO, and then stayed there for a few years, kind of ready to try something new, ready to change ownership groups and just continue to explore, and had found Roper Technologies, which owns Strata. I
Yep.
joined them in April of this year. So I've been there about 6 months. So thanks for your patience as I got my feet underneath me there. And it's been great. I love working there. I love what they do. They sell the CFO offices. I love the owners. I love the people I work with. It's just been great.
Yep. And tell me a little bit more about the company you're at now. So like, obviously I've read the description, but
Sure.
in your own words, maybe describe what they do. And then your role within it is obviously CFO, but
Right.
what does that mean? Like how many employees do they have? How many are you directly managing? All that kind of stuff.
Yep. So Strata sells technology to healthcare systems, specifically to the CFO office. So budgeting, planning, forecasting software, workforce planning, et cetera. In August of 2023, they bought one of their largest competitors, Centellus, and they merged companies together. So like-sized companies came together and created a bigger institution that now also serves higher education and financial institutions. So really highly regulated environments. So much harder to think about cost accounting and think about how the finance office works. And so we provide, it can be machine learning, it can be comparable data sets, it can be all kinds of things to help their finance function be successful in these types of environments. My role is overseeing the finance team, which encompasses accounting, FP&A, that type of thing. The legal team, which is also responsible for at Pampered Chef. And then what we call corporate operations, value creation, how do you get in, build business cases, get things on track, and also strategy planning, everything at Pampered Chef. It really was thinking about setting the KPIs, hitting the KPIs, funding the budget, capital deployment based on what you're doing strategically, and just helping executives make those decisions and create that framework. So sorry, you asked also how many employees.
Yeah, sure.
800-ish in size, pretty big company, continuing to grow. As I mentioned, we're still integrating the two companies. The last step is we go live on one NetSuite on 1/1. So getting those two teams working together in a function that, works together and achieves our goals.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I love hearing the different steps along the way and how you were excited and learned from each of them. And, I think that's part of anybody's journey. Like if it's one step or 4 steps, you know what I mean? Like at each step of the way, you're kind of taking in new information.
That's right.
Challenging yourself in a new way, getting uncomfortable. And part of the growing, professionally is embracing discomfort,
Stubbing your toe.
I tell people that all the time, that work for us or, a mentor or whatever it might be is like, you can't be afraid of the unknown.
That's right. And it's not always going to go great. Not every job is perfect. Not every job is the right step. It's really hard to tell. I said I didn't even know about thinking about the CFO seat until far into my career. It's not like I set out, said, this is what I'm going to do. The FP&A role I took in Seattle. Great. I learned a lot. Probably not the right role for me. It wasn't the best step, but helped me along in my journey. And I'm glad I took that step, but it's not perfect.
Let's say someone is tuning in that is not a CFO.
Yeah.
FP&A, financial planning and analysis.
Yes, right.
Can you just kind of carve that out in terms of like the different types of roles? What is FP&A focused on versus non-FP&A?
Sure. Like the accounting function, the controllership function.
Yep.
Controllership tends to typically be in charge of making sure the bills are paid. So the whole AP function, closing the books, the chart of accounts, the GL system, collecting the money, really looking at actuals and the actual results, submitting it for taxes or reporting purposes, et cetera, where financial planning analysis can be much more around forward-looking, forecasting, building business cases, thinking about the future, building a budget typically or planning, and taking the actuals and looking forward and or helping the business to make hopefully data-driven decisions using best information we have available.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. I know I just wanted to double click on that bit because I knew what you were saying.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, we take a minute to explain that.
Good idea.
Okay. All right. Couple themes for the day. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I'd have to think about this a little bit harder, but you might be the only CFO that I've had on here, which is cool.
Interesting.
Because just like we just did, talking some of the same language and things like that. But I thought it would be good for us to dive into some of the things that I get asked about even.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious, for what your responses are, but also just, your perspective is way different than mine. I mean, you're at a much larger organization. You're with a Berkshire-owned organization before that, whereas, we tend to focus on businesses that are, say, 100 million and less in revenues. Yeah. Broadly speaking. So different sizes of businesses, you're dealing with different, problem sets and stuff like that. So I'm very interested to learn from you. So I appreciate your expertise. Okay. So I want to talk about the role of a CFO thematically. And, even when I started Third Road, I called it Third Road Management, and I use this word fractional CFO that I say at the time that I had never heard anybody use it before I did. I'm not saying I invented it. But I'm saying if it happened, it was coincidental.
Yeah.
Because I had never heard it. But the thing that I saw was that, the businesses that we were interacting with, or I was interacting with, they had people that were doing accounting work,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have sort of a strategic, financial, and operational leader. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I had come from Wall Street world, more or less, where I was doing heavy data analytics, more like descriptive of the FP&A world
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the better comp. But it forced me to go down this rabbit hole of like, why does it that I feel this way, that these businesses are sort of missing this expertise?
Mm-hmm.
And I came across like all these different studies that sort of validated what was in my internal gut, right? But like this is from a report by Chris Calder, as of August 2024. I think it was only 37.6% of CFOs in the Fortune 500 and S&P 500 had their CPA credentials. And then conversely, the percentages with their MBAs was north of 50%. And I think both one's been moving up, the CPA, or the MBA trend, and one's been trending down. And I think it's an incredible skill set to have, but I was like, I wonder why that is. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is my gut instinct, it felt like, was getting validated by external resources, even with companies much larger, is that the strategic, financial, and operational leadership overall. But I'm curious from your vantage point, I mean, you've been in these roles for a number of different organizations. How do you view it as now, and like what has been your own personal journey of how you've seen that role change over time? Or maybe it hasn't, from your vantage point.
Yeah, I think the role of the CPA, specifically when I first started, I think it's similar to starting at PwC. It's that training ground. It's that, can you pass the test? I also looked up the passing rate. So first time passage rate on the CPA is 50%. So not super high. And so there's a little bit of vetting with that you've passed the test. You've put in the time and the effort to get that certification. And I think when I applied for jobs at the very beginning, CPA preferred is all over those jobs that you're applying for and what you're looking for. As you work your way up through your career, controllership, which is a lot of where the CPAs sit within these functions, I think it's table stakes for a lot of CFOs, but I'm surprised at the gap that there is there. I think a lot of CFOs do rely on either their controller or that group to be the experts in domains. And of course, you can learn it and have a high level knowledge that if you have your MBA. But there's a lot that if it goes wrong, if it's humming and working, it's great. If there's something that goes wrong in your balance sheet, your cash rack, just the basics, unwinding that and getting to the recourse, safeguarding the assets, foundational controls, making sure that theft is not possible. These are all part of the CFO role that sure you can get as a part of the MBA, but controls, Sarbanes-Oxley, and everything we've put in place since Arthur Anderson days, really is a part of the controllership function and de-risks the business. And I think you'd be remiss not to learn that part of the business. Now, on the other hand, as I grew in my career, I've mentioned this to you before, but I was given the advice to put the CPA further down my resume, to not draw attention to it, to not call it out, to really make sure that people that were looking at my resume understood I had strategic background, I had a finance side, because it's not traditional, which I actually think is unfortunate. I wish there was more cross training between accounting and FP&A for them to understand what's going on, because they impact each other a ton. They working together to understand how what accounting is doing to close the books can quickly impact how the forecast is being rolled out by the FP&A team. And so ultimately, as you grow in your career, sure, you're spending more of your time, hopefully, on strategic decision making, helping across your peer set, talking with your peers and cross-functional relationships. But knowing that CPA side of the house, now I never did taxes. I wasn't a member of the AICPA or anything in that regard, but I still think that foundational learning that you do in order to get your CPA is a lot of value. And so it's unfortunate that maybe it's not as top of mind as MBA, which does teach maybe more of that, cross-functional relationship, being a partner to your peers, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think even in an FP&A role, I mean, I've done a lot of forecast models in my day. And even understanding the impacts of, the accounting side, it matters, right?
Like spread a prepaid, is like, you have to understand that the expenses is not the same as cash.
Right. And if you're looking at your inventory turns or your whatever, and you're, in an inflationary environment or a deflationary environment, like all those things are going to come into play, because if your inventory balances are decreasing, are you LIFO or are you FIFO, like
Mm,
all those kind of things that like if you understand
that's right.
those things fundamentally, it will make you better
Of
at forecasting the future if
course.
you understand the present, I guess is
That's
another
right.
way to think about
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it. So yeah, that's and yeah. So I was just kind of curious what your overall read is, and I guess the second piece of that is when you're looking to hire within these roles. I'm guessing, if it's more of a FP&A type role, you're looking for certain credentials, where if it's more in the controllership area, you're looking
Mm-hmm.
for other credentials. So like, I guess let's start with the controllership first, because it
Mm-hmm.
sounded like that was a little bit more clear.
Mm-hmm.
But on the FP&A side, is it all people that have, I'm curious
Yeah.
all people that have, do some people come up through corporate training? Do some people come up through the big four? Do some people come up through, um, more like investment
Investment
banking,
banking. Yeah. Right.
kind of
That's right.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm just kind of curious.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that you're looking for?
Well, now I'm in my second rep as a CFO, and I think it really depends on the current team.
Yep.
I happen to have a VP of finance role open, and it is very dependent on who else is on my team, where else I'm sitting with talent, what's complementary to my skill set. We
Yep.
talked about I came up from the controllership side, have a strong CPA background, et cetera. I have a lot of accountants on my current team, and so in this particular hiring situation, I'm not looking for that at all because I need somebody that's probably more in the investment banking background or comes from more of the modeling side, wants to get dirty in the data. And really, a huge quality for us also is understanding enterprise applications. So, in our instance, we run Salesforce and NetSuite. So, how data is flowing, our data integrity, how we're thinking about nomenclature in your data. That's what's going to help you be able to use machine learning, to use AI if you've got clean data set. And so, a finance person with that technology lens or with that IT lens, I've hired at Pampered Chef. I also had a strategic analytics team. They work hand in hand all the time with FP&A. They've got to
Yeah.
have, SQL background, coding background, the ability to mine data. And so I think, again, it's sort of dependent on the skills you've got on the rest of the team. But typically for me, I'm looking for somebody that's come through some type of, likely in the FP&A side of business school. You're not going to have a CPA, hopefully, in that regard. But yeah, I think it depends on the team's skill set.
Got it. Um, yeah, very interesting. And what I find for our universe is because really the businesses that we're working with are smaller in size,
Mm-hmm.
right? That, when I'm hiring people, I really need kind of both.
Yeah, you need somebody that's got both.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so, now we do have our accounting services side of the business that, and we generally say, hey, we want the accounting sort of like done and closed by the time our CFOs are,
Mm-hmm.
picking it up and saying, okay, what are we going to do with the results?
Mm-hmm.
But just due to the nature of it, like you can't be one and not the other, so to
Right,
speak.
definitely.
And so, for us, like typically what we've found is, people that come up through, maybe a accounting system, but have pivoted quickly
Mm-hmm.
into
Mm-hmm.
more, corporate types of roles. And then the third piece would be people that have actually done it with the types of businesses that we've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them have started their own businesses, some of them have done smaller PE shops.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of depends. But
Mm-hmm.
no, it's an interesting, you know,
Well, using the skill set again, I'm able to, I pretty much stay out of close. I pretty much stay out of the controllership. But because I have that background, I can have a 45-minute trial balance review at the end of each close. Just walk me through the GL. Talk to me about the anomalies. Now I'll have the finance team dial in. They need to be listening while the accounting team's checking for accuracy. Let's just walk through each account. Why'd they change quick flux? Like we're not talking anything crazy, but have that lens coming from the accountants to then hand off during your close to that other side. Now, in your case, if it's smaller function, you're hopefully getting that information, parlaying it into then your reporting and strategies. Are we hitting whatever goals we said we were going to do in the period? But
yep,
I think that handoff at the end of close, like that's my pivotal moment right there to make sure everybody's on the same page as the books close. And so I
yep.
don't know, maybe that's how I draw on it.
Oh, that's great. Um, Sort of on a similar thread, just because, like I said, I have a like mind in the room for a change. But I recently got asked about this in, some periodical, and it caused me to go down this rabbit hole again. But it was talking about the accounting shortage. Now, I've
Mm-hmm.
been hearing about this for years, Mostly when we don't do taxes, we don't do audit, we don't
Yeah.
really touch any of that stuff. That we're good friends with those firms.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard them talk about
Mm-hmm.
it. And, I just happened to look up some information, but like, according to the AICPA, the number of first time candidates sitting for the exam decreased from 48,000 in 2016 to 32,000 in 2021. So that's 5 years, 33% drop. And anecdotes are that it's continued to drop since then. Um, and then the AICPA also said that about 75% of its members are at retirement age, right?
Mm.
So, again, I think it's widely known that there's some analytical tools out there, that are, you know, doing a lot of the tasks that, first year people at Arthur Anderson, like myself once did, or something like that. But like, overall, I look at this decline and then I hear people's stories about like shortage. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough people. Like, what are your overall thoughts on,
Yeah.
that and, is it, the tax hours are too long and hard. And, I'm just kind of curious.
You
What's your,
can't really talk about the tax. I would imagine the tax hours are tough in the focus period of time the taxes are done. I also haven't done taxes, don't do taxes, so don't really know there. But I think it's not surprising to your point. There's accounting is set of rules that can be very much fed into a system. There's sometimes use of estimates, but judgment should be applied consistently. Again, something a system can do. So if you think about 10, 20, 30 years from now, the ability for a machine to do some of these tasks seems very high. And even some of the stuff that Strata is building really is helping automate as much as we can. And I think knowing, again, the technical side of things, even when I started as an auditor 25 years ago, the IT side of the things was picking up more than the audit side, not only because it's can pick up anomalies faster, it can dig for sampling in a way that's picking up the samples that aren't random but really look like there maybe is an issue, or
right.
detect anomalies in a more sophisticated way. All it has to do is be better than a human. And so I think there's a bit of a risk there. So my advice is always, if you're going to go down the path of accounting, you got to get the other side. You have to either understand something from a technology background and go with this complement skill set in IT, or on the finance side and get either double major or think more broadly in how you can interpret the information and set benchmarks or act upon it, or really take that human involvement to the next step. And what are we going to do about it? I think reporting the news, which is a lot of accounting, is going to be less and less done by individuals, even teams I've built over time. You start to automate a lot of those tasks. It really shifts into the more value added work, which is what we're all looking for.
Yep.
Which doesn't surprise me, I guess, in summary.
Yeah. And I mean, the last one on here was just about, what does AI utilization look like? I mean, I think you've hit on this. It's already, the wheels are already sort of in motion. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's quote unquote done yet. I mean, I know my brother's a partner at Deloitte, and I can't remember the number. He said that Deloitte has invested in AI, but it was a staggering number. It was something like $20 billion over the last 3 years or something. Like, don't quote me on it. If you're listening, watching, Google it to get the right number. But it was a big number.
Right.
And so there's no doubt that the investment's there. There's no doubt that some of that's in there. But like when it comes to a CFO's role, does it change? I mean, you're still interpreting, information, planning, forecasting, doing data analytics. I mean, like, how do you see,
Well, it's funny. I went to the Strata team this morning. I was like talking to them about what we're doing, right? I mentioned we sell the CFO offices. We're specifically selling these things to CFO offices. And a couple examples we talked about. One is we take across all hospital systems, job codes, chart of accounts. You give us descriptions. We can benchmark you against peers and skill sets without you having to map them. Right? We can use machine learning or big data sets to automatically set you apart from your peers and give you information back that can happen real time versus having to say, okay, this is my job. Who has that job? What does it look like? How am I doing compared to that? So that is one example. Another example is mid-month forecasting. Here's, of course, your trend, how you're extrapolating where it's going, but more macro, what's going on in the broader hospital system and how are we potentially going to end the month or the year, et cetera, using, again, machines can know faster where the trends are going probably more accurately than individuals. And then the third example we were talking about is let's see if I can remember. It is on, oh, just like you were saying, taking variance analysis, especially as you're rolling them up, right? Used to
Yeah.
be, okay, this person submits at a city level on day 3, the regional level on day 5. We're going to roll it up at a national level, organizational level, day 6, 7, and create themes throughout. This can all happen in real time. Everybody puts it in, machine kicks out themes, what's actually material, what, maybe even corroborated against the data itself. And so using AI to build the variance analysis, the flux analysis in a more automated way. And again, rolling up maybe human commentary, but finding themes throughout without somebody else having to comb through it and say, okay, 4 people have said blank. So I think those main areas, and then like the accounting side, those are all really on FP&A, but accounting side, detecting fraud, looking for anomalies in your close, pointing things out that might be wrong before you close your books, thinking about, we use a software called Alteryx, which is unbelievable for reconciliations, journal entries, automation, and all of those senses where every month you're performing the same task over and over and over again. Really a lot of softwares out there can do it in a way that speeds up your close time and increases accuracy.
Yep.
So
Um,
interesting.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's. I mean, we're living in the middle of the
Yeah,
transformation.
that's right.
Sort of as we speak, and I think everybody is wise to look at it as how do we embrace this and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's right.
and I think the people that do will ultimately be the winners. At the end of it.
Right.
When it comes to this sort of, just thought of another question. We talked about sort of the different stops in your journey,
Mm.
and I loved your story about knocking on the door at
I'm
PwC and
here.
being like,
It's coming.
"Excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
here. Hire me."
Yeah.
Um,
Look out.
but like, if you looked at, sort of your career arc, are there pivotal moments that you feel like stand out, or like when you look back, you're like, "I wish I had done this,"
Mm.
or you zigged where you zagged, or I'm just more curious than anything else, or
Yeah,
like really good decisions that you felt like you made.
sure. I mean, I try not to look back and say, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that because I love where I am. I love the life I've lived. So I don't have a ton of regrets. There's certainly been disappointments that I thought were traumatic, but really I applied for a job at Google, didn't get it. Then next day, get this job at Stats and end up moving to Chicago and have a whole life here now, right? So
Yeah,
these individual things that go right or wrong in the moment that end up playing out fine. I think I mentioned it, but being open to saying yes
yeah,
and seeking the opportunities, especially young in career, closed mouth doesn't get fed. Asking for them to do the language gain set to Switzerland, being open to move to Hawaii. I think just having that tenacity to go get what you want to get done. And yeah, there's certain moments without a doubt, having PwC as my first job, foundational for the success of my career. I can't be more complimentary of that start and even just having it on the resume. Then making the decision who I work for when I joined Pampered Chef, that CEO and CFO. I learned so much from them. Having that Berkshire Hathaway network. I made Zoom meetings with every CFO that would take me and had 30 minutes to learn from the NSF Railroad CFO or Dairy Queen CFO, just all these CFOs, just to get time and learn from them. And I think getting that experience and opportunity to get someone's time to poke their experiences like you are today, I think helped me grow so much. And I think every experience has been led it all to here, right? I mentioned I hadn't even thought about the CFO seat until all of a sudden I said, okay, I guess I could do that. I now have both sides and I didn't strategically set out for it, but having taken different stops along the way, it allowed me to, I hope, be a good leader. I think all the success is because there's been good people around me.
yeah,
Either my teams have been amazing or my peers, and it takes both sides of the coin. There's natural tension in a business. I'm sure anybody that's watching on the marketing side of the house, right? There's always a little bit of sales and finance tension, but it's natural and it's good and it's healthy for everybody. And I've learned a lot from those counterparts that I've worked with. And I think having the right people along on the journey has helped me so much. That's been pivotal for my career.
yep. Sort of on that topic, I say a good CFO, needs to understand all different
Hmm.
pieces of the business,
Hmm.
including sales and marketing, IT, all the things,
Yeah,
right? Because at the end of the day, everything's got dollars attached to them.
everything.
Everything.
Especially the people, the systems, every piece. Even like I oversee the legal team. Well, that's got a lot of financial risk sometimes, and how you're thinking about things strategically. I always say I'm not necessarily the most creative person to help us come up with the strategies, but I'm It's my job to help us get a decision, to measure it, to be clear, to communicate it, to know what are we doing, what are we not doing. And so helping the executive team get to that conclusion is my job. Coming up with the best idea, and it's probably going to come from the commercial side of the house. That's their bread and butter. That they know best. But how to help them put data behind it, to decide how much is too much, what can we fund, all of that. I think the CFO can bring a really good unbiased lens to that. We tend to be some of the most common communicators with our ownership groups. So helping the owners understand what are we doing and why. I've had a wide range of owners in my career. I've had
Yep.
Japanese owners in Hawaii. I've had, private equity owners, Berkshire's an owner, and now Roper. And different owners need and want different things. And so helping your executive team communicate to your ownership and understanding what the right strategies are for their ownership group. I just think understanding the whole business is part of it, but doesn't mean we have to be experts in it. We just have to help shepherd
Yep.
all the other areas to come together.
And understand it. And, you hit on the other thing, which is, I think, traditionally people view the CFO as sort of the gatekeeper, like
Mm,
the thou shall not
I
pass.
know. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's right.
But I think to be an effective CFO,
Uh,
uh, you really need to understand people's intentions.
Yeah,
You need to
you
appreciate
do.
their expertise.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, the marketing side of the equation, for example, is, mostly very left brained, right? Or,
Right,
whereas we're very right brained, you know
right.
what I mean?
And we need
Understanding their
both.
perspective and their brilliance and, just appreciating it, I think is really, really important because,
Yeah,
you know, a lot of people think a CFO's job is like basically like the no phone officer.
right.
And I actually think totally different. I
No.
think it's like, how do we take all these inputs and be supportive in the best way we possibly can to help the business move forward?
Yeah, I'm still learning and growing. I'm certainly have done it wrong in my career and probably been the no person when I shouldn't have been. But I think understanding what are you trying to get done and how can we get it done and why am I saying no? I want the sales team to win. I want the growth team to be successful. I also want them to understand the scoreboard. I want them to understand what is success and what are the things we're measuring. And we can't give away the house to get the deal. And how do we balance these things? But I also want them I want to hear what they need and meet them where they're at and understand the customer's need. And I'm really working on getting in front of the customer, understanding their needs. And especially when our customers are CFOs, it's really interesting
Yeah.
to hear how they're utilizing it. But I think you're right in the fact of, it's not here to be no, it's here I'm a partner. But, we also have to have parameters. I always say we are a for-profit enterprise here. I'm here to look at the bigger vision and make sure we can, at the end of the day, be successful for the long term. So
Yep.
I think it's important. Yeah.
Well, very good. Think, I think you've brought a tremendous amount of perspective. Like I said, it's really fun to like learn from you.
Yeah, you too.
You know what I mean? Just
Been
because
great.
like I feel like, you know, you you're doing similar stuff, but you're doing it at a way different and much
Mhm,
bigger
mhm.
sort of level than we're doing it. And so it's good to, I don't know, I think it's encouraging to me that, some of the questions that, you're facing, um, the types of things that you're doing with intersecting with the different areas of the
That's right.
business, it's all sort of universally true. So
Mhm.
it's a shot in the arm, so to speak, to, hear some of your value added points. So I appreciate that. Um, but you're not done.
Fun stuff.
All right. You're not done. On to the fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly what CFOs are known for.
exactly. 100% what CFOs are known for 100% of the time. No, these are just a couple of questions. It's loose time, get to know you time, a little bit just for fun. So the first question is top 3 rock and roll bands of all time, but I always caveat by saying not everybody's a rock and roll fan. It could be non-rock and roll, it could be books, podcasts, whatever note you want to hit on. Let's do it.
Yeah, I am not. I don't listen to a ton of music. My husband kind of curates a playlist at home. But I do drive into the city to go to the AM building a couple times a week. So I listen. I was thinking about it. I listen on the way down. I have a theme where I'm listening to news. I'm catching up on serious topics, BBC, The Daily, what have you. On the way home, it's fun. I'm like,
Okay.
it's interesting to think about how I'm decompressing on the way back. I love Smartless, Local Hero. And there's this great podcast Julie Louise Dreyfus does on women. It's called Wiser Than Me. And so she interviews older women and their successes and gives them a voice and their lessons and wonderful people. I just listened to Billie Jean King yesterday. And so great lessons from women that came before me that had a much harder journey in the business world a lot and then beyond. And so I love that one as well.
Very good. So I heard Smartless.
Smartless.
I heard, what was the Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Oh, Wiser Than Me.
Wiser Than Me. And then the business ones,
Oh, I listen to The Daily.
The Daily.
BBC News. Yeah. Do you listen
Yeah.
to The Daily? Do you know? It's New York Times.
My wife does, so
Yeah.
by default I do.
You're right.
In the morning if she's getting ready and it's on.
Yeah,
You know,
good.
whatever. But yeah, okay. Those are some good ones. And yes, a lot of Smartless fans on the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast,
Yeah.
including myself. So, all right. Second question is, which annual holiday is the best one to you?
4th of July.
4th of July.
I
All
love
right.
the 4th of July for so many reasons. I think of having lived in Glen Ellen now for a while, it's just so communal.
Yep.
It's so beautiful. We get up and we do the Freedom 4. I trained with my kids this year for the first time. So starting in that regard, if weather's cooperating, the food, I like the national spirit and pride in
Yep.
our country, that we come together in that regard. That's not as common these days. I love the parties, the fireworks, the community, being outside. I love it all. I think it's a beautiful holiday.
Yes, it is. It is hard to describe. You're not the first Glen Ellener that has said the 4th of July.
Yeah.
It's definitely,
It's something.
it's something, you know. It's a great time, and it's kind of a, I don't know. I never want to leave town for it. Let's put it that way.
That's
it's a great time. All right, interesting one. If you weren't currently doing what you're doing for work, completely unrelated career that you can see yourself enjoying or thriving in.
Yeah, I would be a farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wisconsin, but you said suburbs of Milwaukee.
Yeah, definitely not farmland.
Okay.
But do you know Clarkson's farm? Do you know who Clarkson is? Ugh, I'm gonna be bad at describing him. He's a car guy.
No.
Okay, he's English, and he's got a show on Amazon called Clarkson's Farm. During the pandemic, he had a farm. Anyway, I would be him. But I have a huge garden. I grow all fruit and vegetables and flowers in my yard. I would love to have like a farm stand. I don't honestly want to help others with their garden, but I would love to just farm a huge plot of land, maybe even have some animals, etc., and give back to restaurants or the community, and utilize what I grow from the earth. I would love that.
Isn't Jennifer Garner doing that? Isn't that
Oh, she does the Once Upon a Time.
something like that. Like I've seen commercials for it. Or
Yeah,
something like
right. Totally.
that. Like a Midwest farm or like some other part of the country.
Oh gosh, well, I just came
Are you
back
growing
from
corn and soybeans?
Oh gosh, I would not like to grow subsidized crops. No.
Okay.
I just came back from Sonoma Valley.
Okay.
They say everything grows there, so I would like to grow there because they grow flowers and warm weather, cold weather. You've got lime trees, you've got archery, you've got everything. I would love to grow in a more temperate place, but I don't grow a lot here. It's pretty great.
Very good. That is good to know. Glen Ellen, not known for being
It's
farm center of the western
There's
suburb.
a community called Hen Ellen. Do you know about them? Trying to get chickens fest, that we're allowed to have chickens in Glen Ellen. I'm not a part of the group. No, just no advertising here. But I hear they're trying to get chickens in town. So
I have heard rumors to this effect. I have
maybe the
no
Frank
horse in the
household.
race.
Yeah, we
No.
could get chickens.
I can't see us owning chickens, but I also
You never know.
don't really care if somebody else does.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
all right. Well, this is great. Thank you so much, Laura Miller, for your time
Thank
and
you,
expertise
John.
and
It's been
brilliance.
Appreciate
Appreciate you. And I think everybody that tunes in is going to love hearing your perspective. So,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.